We are Timmy, Garner, Steve Rapp, unleashing the power of our. How many years, Tim, have we been in this space together?
30 plus from me,
30 plus years. So, just as a
or sales, I should say, for
round
sales.
of introduction, Steve Rapp. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Alternity. Tim Garner, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I am a vice president of business development with Repario Data, and I'm also the CEO of Harbor Digital.
Okay. So, just as a little background, Tim and I through my idea. I wanted to reach out to one of the best salespeople I know. But the general idea of this Sales Docket podcast is really to interview some of the top salespeople in our space to get some of what's in their brain out to the younger generation. That's really the idea behind the Sales Docket. And I've known Tim Garner for 30 years. He was actually my first sales call when I joined a company called Knight Rider. I went on and I was thoroughly impressed with his style and his intelligence and the way he handled himself. And it just kind of it made me really push to become a sales guy after seeing Tim. So this is a this is going to be us right now, just kind of talking about our backgrounds and some of the questions that we have that we'll ask each other. And then on our next one, we will go and invite some of the top salespeople and go through some of the key questions. So, Tim, any thoughts on this from your side?
No, I love the idea. I think a chance to give back based off of our experiences is a great thing, and I'm looking forward to it. It's good. It's good to get back to, getting back into it with you like we used to in the office.
And we
So,
had some good times though. Tim and
yes,
I
we
were
did.
probably the two most competitive people in the Knight Rider Icon New York East Side office. Where I mean, I would pull in hundreds of boxes, and he'd look at me, goes, "Hold on, Rap, let me make a phone call," and he'd pull in more than me. It was pretty annoying, but that's how it started. So competitive at our nature, but just a great friendship through the years. And the reality is, I've got two of my kids in the industry. I go to a lot of shows and I see a lot of folks, with a lot of gray in the beard and some of us who have hair, Tim, in the hair. And the
Gone.
goal is really to, if I could, give some tidbit of advice to this younger generation that's coming up in the legal space where they can learn from us and make their lives a little bit easier. So with that said, I'm going to start asking you your origin story because I think, that is clearly one of the most interesting questions to ask in this space because I don't think anybody wakes up and says, I'm going to go sell services or technology in the legal industry. How did you get started? Share us that story.
So started in DC back in '96. Worked for a company called Balmar Printing and Graphics, worked for their document management group. But at the time, I knew someone who was at Icon, and she had informed me that these guys were absolutely killing it by moving boxes through the city. So I had an opportunity to go to New York as a customer service rep. Started as a nighttime customer service rep, and then moved my way up to sales rep and kind of fell in love with it. I'm a people person, so the opportunity to move to Manhattan and meet new people and go in offices and talk to people, whether it was a partner to a paralegal, it was fun for me. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah, that's great. And and you can ask me the same question. We can kind of go back and forth, but I know. So I'll throw mine out. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
how'd you get
it's a great order.
into it?
So I had finished college and kind of went traveling and backpacking around the world. When I came back to the States, I didn't really know directionally where I wanted to go. My brother was doing commercial real estate, and one of the brokers in his office was doing all of the real estate for Knight Rider. So my brother happened to reach out to Jack Conway, got me an interview with Steve Kaplan, and like you, started, at the bottom rung, customer service rep, and worked my way up to an account manager, and looked at some of the folks ahead of me that were doing this, and I'm like, hey, this is pretty interesting. I will never forget when I was covering for Tom Dearborn back in the day that I think I picked up a bankruptcy mail out, which was 13 pages that needed to be copied like 60,000 times, and his commission on that was $2,000. and I just walked back to the office. I said, "Holy cow! I just made Tom like $2,000 or $3,000 cash in his pocket from 13 little pages of paper." And that was an eye opener for me on what this industry could do from a revenue potential also. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was what I was told the guys in New York were killing it. They were making six figures.
Yeah.
So and I wasn't at the time.
Yeah.
And I knew some of the people that worked at Knight Rider. I didn't think any less of them or any more of them. I was like, I need to get on board with that and put myself in that position. So I moved to New York from
Yeah.
DC. So
So tell us. So I think mentorship is a really important thing as we look from the generation. I tell my kids like find the smartest person, find someone who's got the greatest influence, find someone you respect, and latch on to that person, right? Because there's a lot you can learn from people that it's always been my philosophy is there's always someone smarter in the room, and if you can learn from that person, you become better yourself. Who's your first mentor? I mean, who in the space that we had today, who's that first mentor for you, and what was kind of a lesson that stuck with you, that he or her taught you?
well, I mean, we probably have the same mentor.
Yes, we do.
I remember when I walked down the halls. You remember our sales offices? There were about, I don't know, 10 offices.
Yeah.
And I remember walking down during my interview process and seeing all the reps in their offices. And I remember two specifically. I remember Steve Kaplan, who later became a sales manager and a GM. And I remember Ted Enger. I remember talking to them, taking 10, 15 minutes and was like, wow, these guys are really, really sharp. I could see myself like that. But as I walked down the hall, and not to belittle anybody else, I'm a competitive person. So I obviously compared myself to everybody that I met. And those were the two guys that stood out, right? And when it was all said and done, Steve Kaplan was probably my biggest influence in the industry. And, me and Steve still stay close today. I'd love to probably have him on this podcast if we could.
Absolutely.
The one thing that stuck with me was me and Steve went on a walk to go pick up boxes. I was struggling at Icon at the time because the previous sales manager, I couldn't vibe with him in the way he taught and wanted us to learn our cards and do our presentation. I just felt like I couldn't do it. And the biggest thing that I got out of that when me and Steve went on a walk was he said, I was having a conversation with him. He said, "Give me your spiel." And I gave him my spiel, and he was like, "It's awesome. Like, that's one of the best I've heard." And I was like, "Well, so and so doesn't think." He's like, "Be yourself.
Mm.
What I need you to do more than anything is be yourself." And from that point on, I was free to do whatever I want to do. I talked about my daughter. I talked about, Hootie and the Blowfish because I grew up with those guys in bed. And that became part of my spiel. And it was so easy for me that I looked forward to going out and talking to people, as opposed to I was terrified before to go out because I felt like I was on a script. So Steve
Mm.
Kaplan and the walk we had changed my career.
That's interesting. And one of the things, Tim, I think you have an uncanny ability for is very quickly connecting with people. Like you walk into a room, there's a presence about you, but you also find a very quick way to connect with people, right? I think both of us do that extremely well. Um, and I'm changing things around right now because it just came to me because I was talking about this the other day. When you walked into someone's office, there was maybe a hat from the college, there was a picture of the kids, there was something there that you could connect with, right? You looked at it and you're like, oh, you went to Maryland. You tell me, right? There was a connection. Today with Zoom and when you're meeting people, I think it becomes much more difficult to connect on a personal level, right?
Absolutely.
Do you any any things that you do today differently than you did back in the day? I know that's I'm throwing a completely new
No,
question
no,
at you, but
no. Well, I think you're right to an extent. It is tougher to connect over, Zoom. I am still an in-person guy,
yeah.
right? I travel to meet clients. I still want to be in front. Dinners, lunches, hanging out. It's funny. I went on an appointment in Boston and I was able to research the person
Mm.
to get information, right? So looked at their family history. It was 130 million company. It was an auto dealership. Looked up their history. They started in 1921 with his great grandfather. So when I sat down in the meeting, he had a picture on the floor, and I said, "Is that your great grandfather Ishmael?" And he was like, no, that's actually my father. So immediately started there, right? So there's little things that, and it's not, I guess it is strategic, but I genuinely like people. One of the things I used to say all the time is that I was blessed with my mom's personality.
Mm.
And thank God I didn't get my dad's, right? So my mom was just, treat people the way you want to be treated. And I genuinely love, meeting people, talking to people. So I think it's a great situation for me to be a salesperson or to be a business development guy because I actually like being in front of people. We used to sell copiers door to door. And I remember taking people out and they were like, "Don't you hate it when doors get slammed in your face?" And I'm like, Not really. It just gets me to the next yes." Like, sooner or later, someone's going to say yes and someone's going to let me come in and we'll have a vibe and we'll figure out if I can help that person.
Yeah. And
How,
now I think you're spot on. And I think that's one of, I think you and I are very similar in that, right? Because no's never really deterred us,
yeah.
right? And some people get frustrated by the no's, but no's means that the next person could be a yes, right? And I think there's a bit of the goldfish mentality from Ted Lasso. Like you have to be a goldfish in this space. You just cannot
Yeah.
take things personally. Someone could be busy. You have no idea what's going on with that person when you initially meet them. So, persistence is probably one of the things that I pride myself on because I don't really take no to an answer, but I do try to get to know as quickly as I can. Right. And I think that's another critical sales skill to get to is don't waste your time on people that are not going to buy from you. Right. At that stage. So I'll throw out that Kaplan, we both had Kaplan as our sales manager and I'll never forget. And it stuck with me because it's just one of those things that I think I crushed my best month ever. I mean, I was on the top of my game. And I was probably walking into your office and bragging a little bit to you at that stage. But I remember Kaplan came in my office and he looked at me and he was all serious and he says, Rapp, you just got to hear from now on, it can't be less than that. Like we know your potential. It's always got to be better than that. And I thought that was such a critical piece of advice, right? It allowed me to sit there and say, I set my own levels and I need to keep beating those levels. And I think that comes back to our competitive nature also, right? Is as a salesperson, I think you better be competitive. I mean, I remember one company would only hire ex-athletes from colleges because they wanted that competitive nature. So I think being a competitive, I'm not saying you can't be not competitive to be a good salesperson, but I think it helps, right?
Yeah, no, I think you have to have the ability to challenge yourself. I think, and if you are a competitive person, being challenged is fun. Like that's the one thing I did love about Kaplan. He nurtured us, he taught us, but he always challenged us. I mean, Kaplan was one of the reasons that he'd like, "Oh, Garner, Rapp just brought in 50 boxes. What are you gonna do?" I'm like, "All right." So, and I know he did that to you, and I know that he did that to everybody, but it was such an environment of like family, but
Yeah.
we competed like daily. I'd look forward to that board to see who was up there. And if it wasn't, me dominating that board, the production board, work on it, I'd go out and hit the streets.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. All right,
yeah.
so we kind of we went through the origin story. I love that. I'm going to ask you one question on kind of strategy and sales process. So I think
Mhm.
you already mentioned it. What's the one piece of kind of prep work you always do before a meeting with a high value client or when you're walking in the door? Is there, from a research standpoint, what do you typically do?
Yeah, just basic background, right? I want to find something personal, especially if there's something that I can relate. Did they grow up in Maryland where I grew up? Did they play, sports? Did they, do they golf? Like golfing is one of my big things. Like I am very very engaged, especially at my age now, where I probably do more business on the golf course, than I do in an
Yeah.
office. So finding that commonality is what I'm usually looking for when I research. Nothing crazy, just something common that I can, spark a conversation. And I think one of the biggest things that you kind of learn, or you should learn early on, is to be a good listener. Like if you start talking to someone about what they like, shut up, let them talk.
Mm.
And I think that creates an environment also that people are more trustful of you, and I think that's one of the things that I try to focus on.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's tools. I mean, there's plenty of tools out there today also. Like
Absolutely.
LinkedIn. I mean, you can clearly go on LinkedIn and look at someone's bio and look where they went to school, what they majored in, what are their interests. I mean, all of that is part of the background research that everybody should be doing before they walk in the door. I love that.
And even Facebook. I mean, Facebook shares a lot more than sometimes people want to share. So, but I mean, you can at least find out if someone likes hiking or travels, or
Yeah,
my brother's always on Facebook about being in Cabo or being here or playing golf here. I got all his information if I need it.
yeah. No, I love that. All right, going to personal growth and kind of mentorship on the next stage. Share a story with me. And I think we all have this in our lives, in our careers, about a major failure or setback in your career, and what was truly the one tangible lesson that you'd share with the audience today from that.
Or setback. Hmm. There's a couple of them, but usually I learn from them and they turn into positives. Um, you know, when I went to Icon Knight Rider at the time, I had to come in as a nighttime CSR, and I was promised a position, didn't get that position. Started out at an hourly rate, but I was all for the end in mind. Looking
Mhm.
at everybody in that room, going, I could be that person, I could be better than that person. So, it was tough to come in as a nighttime CSR at 27 years old, and guys younger than me, I'm running boxes for them, but I always thought with the end in mind. So I don't know if that's a failure, but I was disappointed when I came in and I was already in New York and I came in for a sales job, but then, you know, wasn't offered the sales job while I was in New York. So that was motivation for me. Another one I will say is probably the biggest job that I ever did at Knight Rider was that Infinity Broadcasting merger, where we walked in, they had boxes everywhere, all over the country. And as we were getting ready to take the boxes, one of the guys said, "No, we can get this done for 10 cents." And it was like, whoa, like the air went out of my sails so quick because I was counting how much revenue it was, and I had to walk away from it. And when I walked away from it, shaking my head, can't believe it. But I believed in what we were doing. I didn't think they could get it done somewhere else for 10 cents.
Right.
And they called us back. And it was, $2 million in a month, boxes everywhere. I was traveling around the country. So it was amazing. So, I mean, the old adage of, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger is so true. You just got to stick to it because
Well,
you're going to get negative. So,
yeah, and I think you brought up something really interesting because in a very competitive marketplace where this industry has become, being able to walk away from business that is not high margin, that doesn't serve you well, just because of ego and because of the fact that you need the revenue in your numbers, there are times you need to walk away. There are times, and that's a lesson.
all business isn't good business.
Yeah, 100%. And I think people forget that, right? People chase the dollar because they've got a quota, but there are times where it actually benefits you to walk away and then get called back in. And that's a really important lesson, Tim. I love that one. All
Yeah.
right, one more question, and then we'll keep going here. And I love this one. If you could go back to your beginning and give your younger self one piece of advice about selling in this industry, specific to this legal industry, what would it be?
Probably do a little bit more research on the e-discovery space. I was a paper guy.
Hmm.
I was a paper guy. I knew paper. I could write up a job in paper, no problem. But as the world started to shift to technology and e-discovery, I was just, I don't know. I wasn't shy about it, but I was just not into it. And funny, fast forward to where I'm at now, I run an IT company. I'm back in the industry doing e-discovery and I love it. Right.
Yeah.
So I think the key is to, at times where embrace change. Right. At that moment, I was like, I don't want to do that. And when it was all said and done, I just should have probably hunkered down and so tell my other self, my 30-year before self, just do what you need to do. And if you need to put in a little bit more work to learn something, like with AI, things that are going on now, I'm taking classes in AI and stuff I never would have did 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
So that would probably be my advice, is to embrace change.
yeah. And I think the format of being able of what you can gain knowledge from today has changed. Like, for example, podcasts, right? I mean,
Mhm.
doing this, hopefully there's a tidbit in there that someone gets. I listen to podcasts now in the space also. I listen
Mhm.
to different approaches that law firms are taking on Gen AI. Like being able to take your dog for a walk and listen to a podcast on your space and pick up a tidbit is critical. And you're listening to
Absolutely.
clients. I think if I had to go back and give myself advice selling in this industry, is that I think coming into an industry dominated by highly educated attorneys can be daunting for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Um, I've talked to my kids about this also, right? But I think the beauty of our space is that they're great people in this space, and they are people just like everybody else. They have the same thing. They have the same bodily functions that we all do. They do the same things that everybody else does, and understanding that there's a person in front of you who's got the same issues that you do breaks down a lot of the angst to me of dealing with an attorney, right? I mean, I have so many stories of attorneys that were just not the nicest people in the beginning, but if you persistent and break it down and look at them and smile and be professional. I mean, I had one guy at Skad Narps that was, I mean, I wrote back. I mean, we used to write directions on what we needed to do for the project. And
Mhm.
I looked at him, I go, he looked at me when I was reading it back to me. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You think if a partner tells me to do something, I'm going to read it back to him?" He goes, "Take this, get it." And I looked at him, I go, I can't even, if I got this wrong and you're treating me like this, like, could you imagine if I didn't do this right now? And he called me, like, literally, I got back to the office and he was doing like jerky boy cranks on my phone at that time, right? I mean, I held my ground for
Right.
him
Yep.
professionally, and it turned around and got me my level of respect. So I do think that's an important piece that I tell the youngsters today is that don't be intimidated, right? People are people. Just and your point, be yourself, be true to it, be a professional. And I think the most important thing, and I'll tell you to this day, is have integrity. My
Absolutely.
word is gold, right?
Yep.
I'm not trying to tell other people things that we can or cannot do. I keep it as real as I can. Even if it's going to lose me a project or lose me a business, it's just keep that integrity because at the end of the day, 30 years later, I think that's one of the things I hold highest is that I have integrity and it's served me well.
I agree.
Yeah.
And you know what? Life continues to move on, and we know people in this industry when their name comes up, you're like, you don't want to work with that guy or that gal or whatever. And then you have people like you, and I
Yeah.
hopefully like me, that when they go, oh, he's a great guy, you can trust him, because it never goes away. I mean, even if you move from industry to industry or what have you, your bond, your word is everything. So I agree with you totally. So how much time we got, and do you want me to ask you
I think
questions?
this was I think from an initial standpoint, I think this was perfect, honestly, for us to kick things off. I think what we'll do next is invite our first salesperson on. We've got some ideas of who we want to do that.
Yep.
But Tim, this is hopefully there's some tidbits. I'm gonna, send this around and get some feedback on this and we'll go from there. So I'm gonna stop the recording right now.
Okay.
And then we can go from there.